Join our community by subscribing. Every click helps us share more stories like this one. The introduction. In the small town of Maplewood, nestled between rolling hills and dense forests, nothing ever seemed out of the ordinary. The sun rose like clockwork each morning, illuminating the tidy streets and charming homes that painted an idyllic picture of suburban life. But beneath the tranquility, a darkness lay in waiting, a darkness that would shatter the peace of this tight-knit community. It was the crisp autumn of 24, the leaves a riot of oranges and reds, when the first whispers of unease began to circulate. The townsfolk noticed something amiss the day Gracie Harper, a 22-year-old art student at the local university, failed to show up for her classes. Bright and ambitious, Gracie was known for her passion, her laughter, and her fiercely loyal circle of friends. As hours turned into a day, concern quickly escalated into fear. On the third day, a group of students banded together, forming a search party that scoured the nearby woods, familiar trails winding through vibrant canopies. They called out her name, their voices echoing back in hollow response. Each passing hour felt like an eternity, as hope began to slip through their fingers, replaced by a gnawing dread. A week later, when Gracie's body was discovered in a secluded clearing off one of those very trails, the world of Maplewood would never be the same. The joy of autumn was replaced by an ominous chill, the fear of the unknown creeping into every corner of the town. No longer a picture-perfect haven, the community realized they harbored a monster, one that stalked them from the shadows. The quest for justice had begun, and with it, the unraveling of secrets that many would have preferred to keep buried. The victim. Gracie Harper was not just a face in the crowd. She was the kind of person who illuminated a room with her presence. Friends would often describe her as a whirlwind of creativity. Her sketches adorned the walls of her apartment, a testament to her boundless imagination. She had dreams of becoming a renowned artist, and every brushstroke was a step closer to her aspirations. Her eclectic style matched her vibrant personality. Fashionable, oversized sweaters paired with brightly colored leggings and hand-painted shoes. Raised in a family that encouraged artistic expression, Gracie grew up in a nurturing environment where her parents, Anne and Stephen, often attended local art fairs to support her burgeoning talent. Photographs of her childhood reveal a confident young girl with wild curls, her hands perpetually stained with paint. Gracie cultivated her friendships like delicate artwork, dedicating unwavering loyalty to those she loved. In the weeks leading to her disappearance, friends noted that Gracie had been more withdrawn than usual. She had faced some struggles at university. An ambitious project had reached a fever pitch, causing her stress to skyrocket. In late-night conversations, she expressed feelings of inadequacy, questioning her work and her place in a fiercely competitive art world. To her friends, it was merely a phase, a normal hurdle for a burgeoning artist navigating her path. Yet, beneath the cheerfulness and determination lurked unacknowledged shadows. Gracie had confided in a close friend about receiving strange messages from an anonymous number, an unsettling development she brushed off as someone seeking an art critique. Her friends chalked it up to the pressures of college life. Little did they know these messages would soon lead to darkness far beyond what any of them could have imagined. In the simplest moments of laughter and shared dreams, the last flickers of Gracie's hopeful spirit trapped her amongst the complex threads of fate, shaping her tragic ending. Each vibrant memory now haunted by the specter of what was lost forever, etched in the hearts of those who loved her. The crime scene. It was early morning when Officer Mark Thompson received the call about a body discovered in the woods. The voice on the other end of the line trembled with urgency, the weight of the words sending shivers down his spine. Within minutes, the air was filled with the distant sound of sirens, cutting through the serene landscape as the police vehicles approached the secluded clearing off Pinecrest Trail. As Thompson arrived, a blanket of fog hung low over the ground, the sunlight struggling to break through. He stepped out of his cruiser, noting the faces of his fellow officers, their expressions grim and solemn. Dogs barked in the distance, echoing the tension that lingered in the air. The fragrance of damp earth and decaying leaves accompanied the unease that settled over the scene. 20 yards into the woods, just out of sight of the well-tread trail, lay Gracie Harper. She was sprawled amidst the underbrush, her lifeless form shrouded by a tangle of fallen branches and twigs. The vibrant colors of her clothing, a cheerful contrast to the muted browns and greens of the forest floor, created a haunting image that would be etched in the minds of all who encountered the sight. Gracie's once bright eyes were closed, her expression peaceful, almost as if she were asleep. But the evidence told a different story. Officer Thompson observed the bruises that marred her skin, a testament to her struggle end. The position of her limbs suggested a violent end. Nearby, they discovered a scattering of personal effects. Her backpack, carelessly discarded, as if she had been taken by surprise. The initial examination would later reveal a fatal wound, which shattered the illusion of peace, forging a stark reality that this was not an ordinary death. It was the result of a brutal act. Crime scene investigators documented every detail, every shadow, as white chalk laid a silent trail of her last moments. As Thompson surveyed the scene, a heavy weight settled over him, a sense of foreboding he couldn't shake. Maplewood had been a place of unyielding safety, but the discovery of Gracie Harper shattered that illusion. This community, once blissfully unaware of the horrors that could unfold, now faced the chilling reality of a shadow lurking among them. A monster who would likely remain free until justice was served. The early investigation. The moment news broke of Gracie's death, Maplewood descended into a chilling silence. The quaint town, once filled with the sounds of children playing and neighbors greeting each other on their morning walks, was now gripped by fear. Conversations turned hushed, and the local diner that usually vibrated with laughter fell under a shroud of unease. Unbeknownst to the townsfolk, the investigation was just beginning, and every detail counted. Detective Sarah Lewis, assigned to the case, arrived on the scene with a resolve forged from years of experience. Her keen eyes scanned the area, processing the clues unfolding before her. It wasn't just a tragic discovery. It was a potential crime waiting to be untangled. After being briefed by Officer Thompson on the preliminary observations, she began sketching a picture of Gracie's last day. In the days that followed, police canvassed the area, interviewing anyone who had seen Gracie leading up to her disappearance. A witness claimed to have seen her exiting a coffee shop the day before she vanished, her phone pressed to her ear, a concerned look crossing her features. Could that call have been with the mysterious number she had mentioned? Detective Lewis combed through Gracie's social media, seeking any leads, friends, acquaintances, or even enemies hidden in the vast digital landscape. Posts of camping trips, art exhibits, and late-night study sessions painted a vivid portrait of her life. Yet, shadows lurked among the cheerful photographs. An unsettling comment from a random follower caught her attention, an inappropriate suggestion that sent chills down her spine. Perhaps there lay the start of a dangerous obsession. As days passed, frustration began to plague the investigation. The local community, normally so peaceful, was now disrupted with flyers bearing Gracie's smiling face plastered on every lamppost. Mournful vigils were held in her honor, yet among the candles and tears were whispers of fear, the fear of living in a place where safety was no longer guaranteed. Detective Lewis felt the mounting pressure, both from the town and her department, to provide answers. She understood that in the pursuit of justice, the clock was ticking. Each hour felt like a new lifetime lost, each minute reducing the probability of finding Gracie's killer. The pressure loomed heavy, but she steeled herself, knowing that justice would require unraveling the tangled threads of grief, suspicion, and long-held secrets in the heart of Maplewood. The dead ends. Days turned into weeks, and the momentum surrounding the investigation into Gracie Harper's tragic death began to fade. The once bustling crowds at vigils dwindled, and the candlelight that flickered in her memory became shadows against the cold, hard truth. The case was not moving forward. Detective Sarah Lewis felt the weight of disappointment settle heavy on her shoulders as she reviewed leads that had turned into dead ends. Interviews with Gracie's friends unveiled nothing remarkable. Everyone had loved her. No known enemies surfaced. Even the coffee shop where she had last been seen offered few clues. Security footage showed her lingering with a small group, engaged and laughing, but ultimately revealed no suspicious interaction. A thorough search for the anonymous number that had troubled Gracie yielded no results. Redeal led to dead air and unanswered questions, as if the person behind it had vanished into thin air. Her social media accounts contained little that suggested danger, just artful posts and glimpses of a young woman who was still discovering herself. The absence of anything sinister left Detective Lewis grasping at straws. Frustration mounted when a report from the forensic team arrived. The evidence collected from the scene exhibited no DNA, no fingerprints, and no weapon. The absence of clear leads felt like a cruel twist of fate that had opened with such promise was now slipping into obscurity, a shackle tightening around the hearts of those seeking justice. As the investigation progressed, Detective Lewis faced a growing decision: to pursue an increasingly wide net of interviews, or narrow her focus towards Gracie's personal life. Turning her thoughts inward, she began to analyze the relationships Gracie held close. She questioned whether the struggle she confided in her friends was part of a larger puzzle. Another meeting with Gracie's friends yielded a mention of a recent falling out with one of her classmates, a heated exchange over a group project that had seemed trivial at the time, but had occurred just weeks before her disappearance. It wasn't much, but it ignited a flicker of hope, a potential lead that might unravel deeper motivations lurking under the surface. As hidden resentments surfaced and relationships were re-examined under the detective's scrutiny, the darkness surrounding Gracie's case tightened its grip. The walls of Maplewood echoed with uncertainty, and the relentless search for justice transformed into a maze of emotions where each twist seemed to lead only to more unanswered questions. A break in the case. Just when hope seemed to flicker at its lowest, a break in the case materialized unexpectedly. Detective Sarah Lewis sat at her desk, sifting through the mound of notes and files accumulated on Gracie Harper's life. The rhythm of her pen scratching against paper was interrupted by an urgent knock at her office door. Officer Thompson entered briskly, excitement etched on his face. "Sarah, you need to see this," he said, holding out a report like a lifeline. The words "digital footprint" adorned the top of the page. He explained that a tech specialist had managed to trace Gracie's anonymous messages after all, isolating and analyzing the peculiar patterns of her phone activity. As Lewis skimmed the report, her pulse quickened. The messages had originated from a local number that belonged to a man named Jared Wilcox, a fellow student at the university who had been in some of Gracie's art class. The realization was like a jolt of electricity. Jared had often hovered between her social circles, but he had never been mentioned in the interviews conducted so far. With renewed urgency, the detectives sought Jared out. They learned he had a reputation for being eccentric, an artist whose work often veered into the unsettling effect that left a lingering whisper of unease. Friends mentioned how his approaches could border on obsessive. Several had recounted instances in which he had crossed boundaries, overly fixating on his subjects. Within hours, Lewis and Thompson found themselves in a small, cluttered studio apartment filled with unfinished canvases and a strange mix of faded paint and unkempt brush. Jared greeted them with an anxious smile, sweaty palms betraying his calm demeanor. His eyes darted nervously, avoiding direct contact as they explained the reason for their visit. As the conversation unfolded, they gently probed about his interactions with Gracie. His responses were filled with awkward stumbles and vague memories, creating a web of uncertainty around his alibi for the days leading up to her death. The more they pressed, the more he recoiled at a telltale sign that seemed to shout suspicion in the silence. Detective Lewis noted the shift in the atmosphere, a subtle tension building with every evasion. It was clear Jared was hiding something. As they wrapped up the interview, she could sense that the walls were closing in on him. The case, once shrouded in fog, now had a flickering light illuminating a path toward possible answers. The pieces of the puzzle began weaving together, forming an unsettling picture of obsession and desperation that painted a grim narrative reaching far deeper than anyone had initially imagined. Maplewood was still enveloped in uncertainty, but with this break, the shadows began to recede ever so slightly, hinting at the dark truths yet to be uncovered. The suspect, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across Maplewood, Detective Sarah Lewis returned to the precinct with a mixture of determination and trepidation. Jared Wilcox had been placed under surveillance, his movements now scrutinized, as investigators sought to unearth any evidence linking him more directly to Gracie's murder. Jared's apartment, with its peculiar chaos, had been cleared for a more thorough search. Tasked with poring through his belongings, a team of forensic specialists combed through every inch of the clutter. Murals of paint and unframed canvases littered the floors, each a reflection of his distorted mind. But amid the chaos, something else caught the attention of the lead investigator. It was hidden underneath a stack of torn notes Gracie's name, prominent and eerily repeated. Each mention was accompanied by sketches of her, drawn with an intensity that bordered on obsession. But one detail stood out. The last sketch was notably darker, depicting Gracie surrounded by thick, looming shadows, her expression alarmed, as if trapped. The images were chilling, suggesting a turmoil bubbling beneath the surface of Jared's artistic expression. With this discovery, investigators delved deeper into Jared's past, finding troubling accounts of his relationships. Reports emerged detailing grievances from former classmates who had been unsettled by his unreciprocated affections, instances where admiration morphed into unwarranted obsession. Gracie's friends had unknowingly brushed against this delicate thread, their recollections of his insistence on wanting to work with her on projects, raised questions about whether his interest had crossed a line. Meanwhile, as Lewis and Thompson assembled a timeline of Jared's interactions with Gracie, they received another crucial piece of information. Witness interviews mentioned seeing him in the area on the night of her disappearance. His figure shrouded in darkness, pacing back and forth along Pinecrest Trail. While they hurriedly cross-referenced this account with surveillance footage, a burgeoning narrative began to form amidst swirling suspicions. When called in for a follow-up interrogation, Jared entered with his usual fidgety demeanor. But today, the atmosphere was heavy with implication. As Lewis carefully guided the conversation toward the night of Gracie's death, she noted his body language shift. Anxiety morphed into agitation. Under pressure, his facade cracked, revealing a mix of frustration and fear. "Why do you care about her so much?" he lashed out, an unexpected admission escaping his lips. It was an outburst, one that suggested deeper emotions had been brewing beneath the surface. The question hung in the air, charged with a dark undercurrent that could no longer be ignored. As the conversation spiraled, her gut told her they were closing in on something significant. Each hesitance he displayed felt like a fragment of truth waiting to break free. In that moment, Lewis recognized that the investigation had shifted gears. What started as a search for a murderer was evolving into a deeper exploration of obsession and the fragile boundary between admiration and violence. The trial. Months had passed since Jared Wilcox's arrest, and now the small town of Maplewood held its breath in anticipation as the trial approached. The courthouse, once a symbol of justice, had transformed into a crucible of emotions, the air thick with grief and anger, hope and despair. As residents gathered, filling the wooden pews, their faces reflected the heartache of losing Gracie Harper and the quest for accountability. Detective Sarah Lewis found herself seated in the back, observing the proceedings unfold with a sense of determination. She had spent countless hours preparing for this moment, meticulously working through every piece of evidence collected in the wake of Gracie's death. Each detail painted a picture of a young woman vibrantly pursuing her dreams, only to fall victim to a darker force that would be represented in the courtroom by a once familiar face. As Jared entered the room, flanked by his defense attorney, the whispers grew louder. His once nervous energy appeared curiously calm, a stark contrast to the devastation laid bare by the prosecution. Seated at the plaintiff's table, Gracie's parents, Anne and Stephen, wore expressions of steely resolve mixed with palpable sorrow, their grief a constant reminder of what had been stolen from. The evidence was methodically laid out, starting with the testimony of Gracie's friend how she once thrived in community, and how the last weeks of her life were marked by unsettling interactions with Jared. The prosecution revealed the sketches that had been discovered in his apartment, presenting them as harrowing manifestations of his obsession, a narrative that morphed Gracie from an inspiration into a possession. Forensic experts took the stand, detailing the timeline of events leading up to that fateful night. Surveillance footage captured Jared lurking in the vicinity of Pinecrest Trail, a haunting image that underscored the chilling nature of his act. The connection between obsession and violence emerged clearly, with experts discussing various psychological profiles to forge a malignant understanding of Jared's motivation. But Jared's defense team fought fiercely, arguing for the presumption of innocence, insisting that circumstantial evidence was not enough to convict. They painted Jared as a victim of mental illness, someone who had struggled with social interactions but posed no actual danger. The narrative spun into a carefully orchestrated portrayal of a misunderstood artist overwhelmed by his emotions. As the trial progressed, tensions mounted within the courtroom. The sound of the gavel punctuated the air as days turned into a labyrinth of testimonies, each twist unearthing the depths of human emotions and the complexities of relationship. With every witness, the chasm between Jared's calculated facade and the harsh reality of his actions widened further. In a climactic moment, it was Lewis's turn to testify. She recounted the timeline of events, the parallels connecting Jared's psychological history with Gracie's tragic fatia, compelling narrative woven from the ordinariness of life, turned inexplicable horror. By the trial's conclusion, the jury had been immersed in a sea of evidence and emotion, deliberating the gravity of truth against the backdrop of loss. The weighed silence held the collective heart of a town seeking closure as they awaited the verdict. In that moment, Maplewood faced its reckoning, clinging to hope that justice would prevail against the shadows of despair. The aftermath. The verdict arrived with a profound stillness reverberating through the packed courtroom. Jared Wilcox was found guilty of second-degree murder in the death of Gracie Harper. As the jury foreman read the words guilty aloud, a heavy sigh swept across the room. For Gracie's parents, a mix of relief and heartbreak washed over them. Justice had been served, but the price they paid would never be repaid. Outside the courthouse, reporters clamored for statements, seeking to capture the raw emotion of the moment. Anne and Stephen Harper, unable to hunt down the right words, stood hand in hand, their expressions etched with a mixture of sorrow and strength. The brutal reality of their loss echoed in their hearts, yet in the wake of grief, there was a flicker of hope that perhaps Gracie's legacy would remain alive, a reminder of the importance of awareness and vigilance in the face of domestic violence and obsession. Detective Sarah Lewis stood off to the side, watching the scene unfold as she reflected on the countless hours spent unraveling the complex web of deception surrounding Gracie's life and demise. Though justice had been achieved, she felt the weight of the monster that existed in the Shadows monster that had been lurking among them, a chilling reminder that not all monsters wear a mask. Some are simply cloaked in familiarity. In the weeks that followed, Maplewood undertook a wave of healing. Gracie's memorial service was held in a local park. The autumn leaves a vibrant embrace around the gathering of friends and loved ones. Candles illuminated raised photos of Gracie, punctuating her identity as an artist full of potential. Video projections showcased snippets of her laughter and passion, drawing tears and memories from those who knew her. It was a day of tribute, a reminder that while violence can steal life, it cannot extinguish the spirit of a vibrant soul. The town began hosting workshops and lectures on healthy relationships, mental health awareness, and the subtle signs of obsession. The heartbeat of Maplewood was rekindled, invigorated by a collective purpose to create a safer community where the signs are recognized and addressed. Each session spurred conversations that might have seemed uncomfortable, but were necessary, a means to confront the darkness and the light. Jared Wilcox faced sentencing in an empty courtroom, a man stripped of the thought he had worn, his obsession now a definitive scar on his identity. As the gavel came down once more, his fate sealed behind prison bars, Detective Lewis pondered the fragile line between fascination and fixation. The memory of Gracie would always be a Lasona reminder that connection begins with understanding, that darkness can seep into the most ordinary corners of life, and that the fight for justice is never truly over. In the heart of Maplewood, the sun rose day after day, each ray casting light on the shared journey of resilience and remembrance. As they moved forward, the town bound itself together, fortified by sorrow and hopia commitment to honor Gracie's memory, with every step taken toward a future marked by compassion and vigilance. Reflection. As the seasons turned, the memory of Gracie Harper remained embedded in the heart of Maplewood. The vibrant autumn leaves that had once heralded her disappearance now transformed into a symbol of resilience and remembrance. Detective Sarah Lewis would often find herself reflecting on the harrowing journey from a promising young artist's life to a courtroom where darkness found its voice. Each day in the precinct served as a gentle reminder of her commitment to the community. She continued to attend the workshops centered on relationship health and awareness, sharing insights from her experiences while listening intently to the passions of others, eager to prevent tragedies like Gracie. These collective discussions became a testament to the belief that no one should navigate suffering alone. Gracie's parents, too, had turned grief into action. They founded a nonprofit organization dedicated to supporting victims of domestic violence and educating students about healthy relationships. Their advocacy flourished, fueled by the passion of those who refused to let Gracie's story be reduced to just another statistic. In quiet moments, Sarah often envisioned Gracie a bright, familiar face shining back at her through a sketch. The essence of life palpable in the colors that once danced across her canvases. The darkness that had haunted Maplewood was tempered by a compassionate clarity. Awareness was a shield against perils that too often lingered unseen. The journey remained arduous, yet a collective spirit of hope surged forth. As they embraced their shared responsibility for creating safer spaces, the town learned that even in the shadows of despair, there exists the potential for change, healing, and ultimately, victory.